Welcome to the Sportswagers.ca podcast with Brian Sherwood Steinberg and Matthew Finney.
Welcome to the Sportswagers.ca podcast. I'm the man behind the board, Matthew Finney, of course, joined this week and every week by Brian Sherwood Steinberg, the man, of course, firing up those great free daily write-ups every single day on Sportswagers.ca. Good day, Brian. How are you doing?
I am doing pretty good, Matt. A lot of things on the go right now. We have we're gonna cover some good stuff today. We're gonna cover live betting on basketball and NHL and football. Actually, live betting is becoming quite popular. It's picking up a lot of steam. I would suspect sometime in the next couple of years we're going to get another exchange in Canada. We'll see about that, but there's opportunities out there with Bet365. They have a great live betting board, and I'm going to cover today all the do's and don'ts of live betting. I think it's a great opportunity. You know, you and I, we're on there every night, and we've done quite well with live betting, and I'm going to point out all those opportunities to you on this podcast. With college basketball starting, there's going to be even more opportunities. So I think it's a great time to do that. First, before we get started with that, I do want to go over a little bit more regarding NHL handicapping. We covered that a little bit in our last podcast, but I do want to just elaborate a little bit more on NHL betting. Just our approach. I mean, listen, you can take any approach you want to betting NHL hockey, and I've said it before, and the proof is in the pudding. NHL is the most luck-driven sport of them all. It's not even close. I could pick a handful of teams or all the teams and go through their games one by one and show you examples every single night in the NHL of teams that get dominated and win. I mean, there was a game a couple weeks ago, Colorado and Carolina. Carolina outshot Colorado 60-27 and lost the game 5-3, right? Now, if you bet Carolina that day, you didn't make a bad bet. You made a really good bet, but you lost, right? You know, the other night, Boston played in Toronto, and we bet Toronto that game. They were $1.26. That was last Saturday. They were $1.26 underdog. And it looked like a really good bet. And as it turned out, the Maple Leafs won the game 3-1. It wasn't a good bet. They actually got badly outplayed that game. They had 20 shots on net and scored 3 times. And Curtis McElhinney, the Leafs backup, played out of his mind and stopped 36 of 37 shots or something like that, and the Maple Leafs won. So we won that bet, but it wasn't a good bet. We make bets all the time that are really good bets that lose. We're not looking, to predict the outcome of the game. We're looking for value, and we're looking for the team that's going to have a advantage, a possession advantage. We're looking for the team that's going to outplay the opposition, right? We can't predict what's going to happen. We can predict somewhat accurately which team is going to have a significant edge in play. And if we can stick with that and find those advantages, we're going to make money over the course of a year, just like we do almost every single year. So, you know what? You can look at the results. I mean, you listen to Doug McClain and Nick Kiprios on Saturday night or during the week or whatever when they're on, all they talk about is results. Why is Montreal not winning? What's wrong with Montreal? There's nothing wrong with Montreal at all. They're actually playing great hockey. You won't find too many teams that are playing better hockey than Montreal right now, but they're not getting the win. Same with Edmonton. Edmonton's not playing poorly, but the results say that they are, right? Because that's what the emphasis is on. Results. You can't put emphasis on results. Actually, the beautiful thing about results is it provides opportunity to us every day. Look under the hood. Look for the possession numbers, find situations that might be favorable, and find the team that's taken back a price that's going to have an edge in play. You look at Las Vegas. I mean, they've been paying off like a slot machine. right? Pardon. Like, they're scoring at a very high percentage. They're getting outplayed most periods, and eventually it's going to come back and bite them eventually. It may not happen next game, but you know what? Their stock is rising. I mean, they're still getting prices on Vegas. If they keep winning this way, their stock is going to go up, and they're going to be a good fade at short prices, right? Like, whereas if the results match the performances right now, they would be getting back $1.60, $1.70, $1.80 every single game. But they're not. Their prices are actually very inflated. Like, they're taking back $1.30 when they should be taking back $1.70. So, those things are going to catch up to these teams. Even Carolina. Carolina is dominate. Carolina is in last place in the Metropolitan Division in the East. Like, they're not playing like a last place team. They're playing like a first place team. They are dominating almost every single time they take the ice. They're running into hot goaltending. Their goaltending itself hasn't been that great. Just a lot of bad luck. Shots off the post, deflections aren't going in. These guys like McLean and Kyprios, I mean, they got to talk about something. And they'll talk about, Montreal's not doing good because their penalty killing is performing poorly, or they're not scoring any power play goals. Last year, the Toronto Maple Leafs, they had a really good year. They were first in the NHL in penalty killing. This year, they're 18th. Why? Why are they 18th? Like, are they worse this year? No, they're not. They're actually better this year. They have Patrick Marleau. They have Ron Hainsey, who plays like almost every, penalty kill, right? He's on there for almost the whole 2 minutes. He's a great penalty killer. Not good. He's great. So they're actually better this year, but they're not getting the bounces, right? Those deflections are going in. I mean, if a team is taking far less shots or getting far less shots on their power play, or creating less chances, then you can understand the decline in their power play or penalty kill ranking. But that's not true at all with Montreal or the Leafs or any one of these teams. You don't go from first to 18th, when you improve because you're worse. You go because of you get better or get worse because of nothing but bad luck, right? So all that stuff, all those results or rankings and power play and penalty killing, they mean absolutely nothing, right? Pay no attention to it whatsoever. Pay no attention to a team that's scoring a lot of goals or not scoring at all. Like Carolina, their shooting percentage is 6.83. They're not scoring goals. That's going to go up. New Jersey is scoring a ton of goals. And that's not sustainable. They're going to come down. So instead of going with the flow or going with the propensity or the trend that team is on right now, look at it from the opposite side, right? A team that's shooting at a high percentage, it's going to even out. A team that's getting no power play goals is going to start to score some. And a team that's not letting in any power play goals is going to start allowing some, right? It's all luck. Power play, penalty killing, it's all luck. And how do I know that? What proof is there in that, right? Well, it's very much like turnovers in the NFL. You can look at it every single season, and you can put it, you can look at top penalty killing, like take the NHL over the last 10 years and take top to bottom, the best penalty killing teams and the worst penalty killing teams, and the same with the power play, right? There's no consistency. There's no consistency whatsoever. You may as well put all teams' names in a hat and pull them out one at a time, and that would be your list because it's the same thing. It fluctuates every single year. Teams go from the top to the bottom, to the bottom, to the top, to the middle, to all over the place because there's no skill involved in that, right? Like, I shouldn't say there's no skill. I mean, there's skill in hockey and there's skill in scoring and all that stuff. But, I've said this before, Matt. The penalty killing and power plays are all the same. Every team does the same thing. In penalty killing, they form that four-corner box, and they try and keep the team on the outside and shoot it down the ice when they can. And on the power play, they set up in the zone. They try and get it back to the point. They get a man in front of the net to either screen or deflect the goaltender, and sometimes it goes in and sometimes it doesn't. It's all the same. If you're hitting a power play at a high percentage, it's good luck. If you're hitting at a low percentage, it's bad luck, and that evens out over the course of the season. So, I'd be looking at teams with bad power play numbers to increase it, because it's just the natural way things are going to happen, right? It's just the probabilities, right? If you want to talk about absolutes, those are absolutes. I mean, it might not happen that game or the next game you bet, or, like we bet against Brian Elliott last week or whatever, because we just don't like him as a goaltender. His under-the-hood numbers are really weak, and he had a great game against Chicago. Like Philadelphia played Chicago, and we bet Chicago taking back a price. Chicago outplayed them, outshot them, outchanced them, and they lost the game 3-0 or 2-0 or something like, or 3-1, something like that, right? That's not a bad pick. It was a good pick with unlucky results. Just like Toronto, we had Toronto last week, right? We figured Toronto would outplay them, would do better, they didn't. They got outplayed and we won the bet. That was a lucky pick. Right? So, when you're handicapping the NHL, forget the results. Let these guys on TV tell you why these teams are going good and going bad based on the results, right? It means nothing. Do your homework, right, like we do, and look for those edges under the hood that's going to even out and give you an edge over time. And that's really the best approach to NHL. There's nobody that can predict which team is going to get hot, which team is going to score 2 goals out of 4 power plays. Like, there's just nobody in the world that can predict that stuff, right? But if you're taking teams that are going to have a puck possession edge, that are going to take the play to the other team, that are going to dictate the play of the game, and that stuff is somewhat predictable. Right? I mean, you never know if a team is really tired, if they got in late the night before, if they're, lethargic, if there's a bug going through the dressing room, if there's, that stuff you cannot predict all the intangibles, but you can fairly, somewhat accurately predict which team is going to dictate the play and which team is going to take it to them. That's the best approach to handicapping in the NHL, or really any sport for that matter. You take a football game, right, like New Orleans against Buffalo this past Sunday. New Orleans dominated that game from start to finish. Absolutely dominated, and they blew them out. You don't get teams in football that get dominated like that and win. It just doesn't happen. And that's why NHL hockey is the most luck-driven sport. It is so luck-driven that you really have to look into those under-the-hood numbers to find great value, and you can do it. And over the course of the season, you got a really good chance of winning by applying those methods and theories.
Well, and just over and under reactions too. Like we talked, Austin Matthews, and he's been out, and a few other just injuries, stuff like that. Like you see the line move, and they announce he's out. They make a unexpected goaltending change. I think it was at Minnesota last week in Toronto, right? Dubnyk was supposed to start. They decide they're going to go the other way, and Matthews is out. And then money just came in on Minnesota all day, and then Toronto was, they won the game, no problem.
There's examples like that every single night, right? In the NHL, it's such a luck-driven sport. So just keep that in mind, and we shall move on to live betting now, Matt.
I'm excited about this. I'm not ashamed to admit that I've got caught in an afternoon or two betting Chinese women's handball. Value's value, man. There's a reason it's on the board. You know what I'm saying?
Well, people make a lot of mistakes. Like, I read the forums and I listen to what people are telling me on Twitter and messages and whatever. And people are making a lot of mistakes when they're betting, and when they're betting live, right? So let me just go over this. Like, we've ran some webinars, and I've proven over and over. On these webinars, I've actually opened up my screen sharing, and I've shown people exactly how to bet. And I know some people can't make those webinars because of time, because of whatever, but I've proven over and over again, that we can make money betting live. And instead of running another webinar, I'm going to put this on this podcast, and hopefully you will get a good idea of what to look for in betting live. So this gets applied to every sport, especially football and basketball. So, what I do and what you should do is open up a page. I go to Donbest Sports, but you can go anywhere. And make sure you have the closing lines available to you to see at all times, right? So when the game starts, you have the closing line, right? So let's take, Atlanta and Detroit in basketball, NBA. We'll say Detroit's a 6.5 point favorite in that game, right? All right, so you have that information. That's really valuable information. That's the best information that you have to use to your advantage. That's going to dictate what you're going to do, okay? So now let's say that, when the game first starts, there's not a lot of fluctuations, right? Like even if Detroit goes up or Atlanta goes up by 4 points or something like that, Detroit's like right off the bat, Detroit's still going to be in the 5.5, 6.5 point range, as a favorite. But when you start getting deeper into the game, like let's say late in the second quarter, that's when the point spread really starts to take effect, the live point spread, okay, because it's getting closer to the half. You're almost into the second half, and a pace has been established in the game. So let's say, for instance, Detroit is up 14 points with 2 or 3 minutes left in the half, right? Well, here's what happens. Detroit's a 6.5 point favorite, so before the game starts, you have to lay 6.5 points, okay? Now, let's say Detroit is up by 14, and the point spread is 13.5, the live point spread. Well, think about this for a sec. Before the game starts, you're losing. You're laying 6.5 points, right? You're losing. You have to make up 7 points to win that bet, right? But in live betting, now Detroit is live betting. They're a 13.5 point favorite, but they're up by 14. So right when you step in, right there, you're not behind, as you would be if you had bet the game at the beginning, right? So instead of, laying 6.5 at the beginning and being down 6.5, now you're up 0.5 point, right? They're up by 14, and the live spread is only 13.5. So when you make this bet, you're playing a favorite and you're winning, right? And people think that's great, but it's not. Okay, that's the mistake that people make, right? Is that they make a wager that's already winning on a big favorite. Well, really what you're doing is you're playing into a horrible number, right? You're playing, when the line is 6.5, now you're laying 13, and I understand they're up 14, but, the odds makers are really sharp when it comes to NBA or these NFL games or whatever. Way more often than not, they are going to be within range of that point spread, within 2, 3, 4 points of that point spread, right? So you're going with the worst of it. So instead of laying 13.5 points because they're up 14, the smarter bet is based on the point spread of being 6.5 is to take that 13.5. You're getting 7 more points than the original offering, and that's a great bet. More times than not, that team that's losing or that fell behind by a big margin is going to make a run, right? Almost every team is going to make a run in every game in the NBA. Very rarely do you see a team go wire to wire or go run after run after run, right? So the smart thing to do is wait till you're getting a big edge in the point spread. So if the line is 5, the closing line is 5, and they're offering 13.5, that's when you step in and take those 13.5 points, right? You're getting a huge edge. It's the same with football. You take any game, right? Doesn't really matter. Any game. And the team is favored by 4.5, and now they go up 2 touchdowns, right? And now the line is 13.5. That would be the right time to take the 13.5 because you're getting a 9-point edge from the original point spread, from the closing line. And trust me when I tell you that those games are going to come back the other way way more often than not. So you have to set parameters. You have to set parameters and stick with it at all times. So if your parameter is, I want to get a 9-point edge or a 10-point edge or an 8-point edge, right? That's when you step in. I also suggest when you step into a game, especially basketball, you wait until the momentum stops, because that 13-point lead can turn into a 20-point lead. So, in basketball, it's all about runs. Teams get hot, they get momentum, whatever. If a team goes up 6, then 8, then 9, then 10, then 8, then 10, then 12, then 11, then 13, then 15. You've got to wait kind of till that momentum stops, right? See where it settles. Just because they're up 13 doesn't mean it's going to stop at 13. Right? If they're up 13, they may go to 20. Wait for that momentum to stop. Let's say it stops at 17. Now, instead of, stepping in at 13 and a half, you're stepping in at 17 and a half when the original line was 7 and a half or something like that, right? And you're getting a massive edge, So wait for that momentum to kind of stop and then step in then. All right? Not only do you have a great opportunity to win that game, it also provides a middle opportunity. So if the other team, let's say you take back, 15 and a half points, now your team goes on a run and it goes back down to 5.5, you can come back and bet the favorite, and you're working with a 10-point middle, which is another aspect of live betting that I'd like to talk about, because, you have a decision to make. Do I or don't I? Do I attempt a middle or don't I attempt a middle? Do I attempt a middle? Which games do you attempt a middle in, and which teams do you not attempt a middle in? So, my philosophy is this: whether you're playing one game or 2 games or 5 games or a week or whatever, you got to pick one way and stick to it. In other words, if you're attempting middles, attempt them all the time. Do not pick and choose which games you're going to attempt a middle in. You either always or never, right? It doesn't have to be that way all the time. You can say, tonight I'm going to go for middles. Tonight I'm going to stick with just, my edge on the point spread. Don't pick a night and, some games you choose to go for a middle and some games you leave it, because, what's going to happen is, those games you attempt a middle won't hit, and the games that you leave won't hit, and you'll end up being caught in the middle of all that. So really, the easy decision, the easy solution is to either go for a middle every single time or never. The same with just leaving your bet as is, right? The good thing about leaving your bet as is that you're going with a big edge. My philosophy, I used to attempt middles, and once in a while I'll still pick a night and do that. But more often than not, what I'm finding now, and I've been doing this for a few years now, and I get more experience. I learn more every year, and I get more experience every year. I'm leaning more to just leaving the bet as is, because you're getting a big edge, and you're going to win a lot more than you lose, right? Middles are great because you're getting almost 20 to 1 on your money, and you're going to hit some. But you know what? When you're taking, like, let's say a team is a 4-point favorite and you're taking back 13 and a half points and they come back to tie the game, right? You have such a big edge in that game, getting 13 and a half points in a tie game with, a quarter to go or something like that, right? You don't want to jeopardize that profit by going for a middle, because if that doesn't hit, you lose the juice, right? I know you make it up in the middles that you do hit, but I find that you're taking away a big edge. My philosophy is more leaning now to just leaving the bet as is and letting it stand, because those bets win so often, okay? So the mistake that I just want to recap, the mistake that people make is taking a favorite at a higher price than the closing line. In other words, the closing line is 4, the team is up 9, and you only have to lay 7.5, and people are laying that 7.5. That's the big mistake that people are making, and why these live betting sites are making so much money. The smarter thing to do, or the more prudent thing to do, because the line makers are so sharp, that they're almost always around the number. The smarter thing to do is wait for those inflated points and scoop them up, right? And you're going with the best of it, and you're going to win a lot more of those bets, all right? So whether it's football or basketball, always keep that in mind and wait for that opportune time to step in and grab inflated points, right? And if you do take those inflated points, let's say the number goes up to 12, let's say the line is +4, and now you're getting 12, and you grab the 12, but the team goes up by another 9 points, right? You can step in again. You know, you don't have to stop at that 12. If it goes up again, you can take the 21 or the 20, right? You know, so your first bet could be 1 unit and your second bet could be another unit, right? So set a limit on what you're going to lose on a game, you know, and kind of pace it out. You can take, you know, I like to make 2 bets at the most. Sometimes I'll make a 2 unit first bet and leave it at that. Sometimes I'll make a 1 unit bet and a 1 unit bet, right? So you can leave a window open there, but don't go more than.
I think that's a great point, Brian. Let's even just, like, you've gone through so much here. Let's even just reset for a second. So many good points to start, you know, how to bet. But the big thing in these live games as well, and it's in every aspect of gambling, it's discipline. And you can't let these games sort of get off the railroad tracks. And so I'll kind of let you just take a deep breath. And then, yeah, talk about how important it is to manage your money inside of these games and to not chase bad games.
That's such a good point, Matt. And again, you know, you have to set a limit on a game. Otherwise, you know, you'll go for 1 unit and then another unit and then another. Like, you're chasing one game. Don't worry about one game. Set your limit at, let's say, 2 units. If you lose it, you know, and your team falls behind by 30 points, you lose it. That's all there is to it, right? There's going to be blowouts. There's going to be blowouts in basketball and in hockey. And you can't chase it. So set your limit to whatever you're comfortable with and don't chase it. You'll make it up on the other games. I've outlined the right time to step in and the wrong thing to do. All right? Always be mindful of the closing line favorite and bet it accordingly. And that applies to totals too. If you see a total that's at, that closed at 200 or 210 or whatever, and 3 minutes into the game it's down to 202, you know, because there's no scoring, you know, you get an edge on that too. All right, so you can, if you're comfortable playing totals, you can play them with totals. If you're not, you can play sides. You can also play money line sides too. But the thing I like about playing totals is that, you know, if you're taking back 13 and like, let's say the line is 6 and now you're taking back 14 and your team is down by 16, right? And you're taking back 14 and a half points. You're right in the game. You know, right off the bat, you're right in the game. But if you're betting money lines only, you have a long swim back to get back into that game. So I like the point spread live betting. I think it's a tremendous opportunity. It's not that I think that. It's proven. You know, I've proven it. We've proven it in our webinars. We've proven it together on the phone, Matt, when we do these games. Always find great opportunities. So I also recommend that you start, if you're going to just starting this out, start small. It's not something you're going to learn overnight. You're going to get better at it every single time you bet it. Okay? Every single night you attempt it, you're going to get better at it. So start small. Familiarize yourself with the tendencies of the line movements, right? I'm telling you that these live betting sites, they're not so sharp. They're not on the ball, as they say. There's some sites that don't even offer it, but people are betting into it, and they're betting into it wrong, and it's providing us with great opportunities every single night. So really take that, practice it, apply our philosophies, and you will do really good in live betting. It's a great way to bet.
Well, the key, too, with Bet365 is you can bet a quarter if you wanted to. You can go so small. And the big thing, like anything else, is get comfortable, get used to sort of playing from behind. Like, you don't want your first bet to be overexposed, or maybe even a 1 unit bet or something that your regular bet is, because it's so easy to chase. And it's just from my personal experience. Like, it's, you know, like, okay, well, they're taking back, 5 extra points. Well, that's pretty good. I'll grab. Now it's 10, and now it's. You look at the eye test. We talked about Buffalo and New Orleans earlier today. Look at that game. If you were not watching that game, and you kind of stumbled along, and you thought, the Bills were a favorite, and New Orleans getting a lot of attention this week, and all that kind of stuff, and well, taking back 13 or 14 and a half points with Buffalo, that doesn't look too bad at halftime. But had you watched 10 seconds of that football game, you knew Buffalo was completely fucked. Like, there was just no way. And the only reason you and I didn't jump on New Orleans, like you said, is because we can't play a bad number. Now, could we have won that bet? Absolutely. But if we chase bad games or chase bad numbers, even if it's, not looking too bad, even if it passes the eye test, it's still, we can't do it. So that's another part of the discipline I think, too, is important, is that make sure you're always getting the advantage. Don't give the house the advantage, even if it passes the eye test.
Yeah, exactly right. And what Matt is referring to is it's so important to not do this, right? You're watching a game, your team looks great, like New Orleans, against Buffalo, and they're up 14 and they look like they're going to kill them, right? And it's very tempting to lay 13 and a half. You're watching the game, they look great, Buffalo looks completely dead. And they were dead. But if you're playing that 13, remain disciplined. You're playing into a really bad number. And even though it may win, and it did win easy, more often than not, it's not going to win. It's a bad number. Don't play into bad numbers in football or basketball or any sport. Don't play into bad numbers. That is what I call a house advantage. You want to play into the house inefficiencies, okay? You want to take back bad now. You want to take back a very profitable number. You're playing into the house inefficiency. You want to play a number where you're getting a big edge as compared to what the closing line on the point spread was. Like us, we're sure you watch a lot of games, football, basketball, whatever, and so many of them come down to the final drive in football or the last few possessions in basketball, right, when it comes to covering the spread, because the odds makers are so good. They're so sharp, right, that their number is way more often close than these live bets, these live numbers are. In almost every basketball game, regardless of the line, you're going to see a team go up double digits. One or two, like if the line is 4, it's not going to be around that number the whole game. Almost every single game, you're going to see, 10, 15-point leads by one team. And that's where the opportunity comes in, okay? So just keep that in mind, and the same applies for football. It's a great way to bet, and I would be happy, and so would Matt, to answer any of your questions or concerns you may have, or something you've experienced in game that we haven't covered here that you're not sure of. I would be happy to assist you in any way I can, and Matt would too. So we'll leave it at that, and we really hope that you can take advantage of those great opportunities.
Well, like Brian said, give him a follow on Twitter at Sportswagers.ca. I know you always have your phone. You're always in front of the laptop. I'm pretty good, too. I'm at Matthew Finney. The show as well, I get those, too. That's at SportsWagersPod. Send them along. I mean, we'll get the alerts if you see something you like, or if there's... But Brian laid it out. I mean, you really... It's so... The tools are there. You can go to covers. You can see... I think, Brian, you gave me the tip on covers even with their live in-game. They will tell you and show you if, the line is, the team is covering or where the situation is, live. So you don't even really have to think about it. You can see where the edge is on covers during their live game. If you want to quickly jump in, you can go to line history. You can see, okay, was Penny ahead of that game? Where was 365 on this? Where did it open? You can apply all the tools we use to betting before the game, in the game, and still get even a better edge yet. And we're finding more and more, Brian, that it's harder to bet before the game. I mean, we still do it, but some weeks the before game bets, they're great, and then the in-game bets, we don't hit what we're supposed to hit, and sometimes it doesn't work out. And then the next week we get smashed on the pre-game bets, and then we hammer it in game, and we do very, very well. So it's a yin and a yang, and but you got to just apply the same discipline and the same tools just all the time in both aspects of the game.
Yeah, and don't get discouraged. Like if you play a live game and you lose the first night or whatever, or the second night, or you lose, don't get discouraged by it. It's a great way to play. The opportunities are endless. The game is not going anywhere, so it'll be there tomorrow too. Don't get caught up in one night. There's some nights, whether you're playing poker or whether you're betting sports, that it's just not going to happen, right? It's just the way it is. When you're gambling, losing is inevitable. So don't get discouraged. You stick with it. So always stick with it, and you'll be much better off. And I wouldn't be suggesting that you look at this if it wasn't extremely profitable. It's more profitable than flat betting before the game because the opportunities are so great. So apply our series. Let us know how you're doing. And if there's anything we can help you with, or there's something that you come across while betting in game that we haven't covered here, we'll be happy to help you the best way we can.
I dig it, Brian. That's pretty solid. Anything else you want to add before we get out of here? That was a pretty good wrap-up.
No, that's it, man. I'm, let's get back to the live betting.
All right, sounds good. Let's get, like I said, get Brian a follow on Twitter at SportsWagers3, the podcast at SportsWagersPod, myself if you'd like, at Matthew Finney. For Brian Sherwood Steinberg, well, I'm Matthew Finney. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Sportswagers.ca podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe. For free daily picks, visit Sportswagers.ca.